Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next segment of Take a Pause is GCC podcast. And my name is Ganas Gama.
And Guadalupe Torre.
And it is really nice to see you back here in our YouTube channel. And so today we're actually having such an amazing guest, who is a sports anchor for Telemundo 48, Carlos Yustis. Thank you so much for coming here today. And actually, we went back to the studio with Communication Club on March 13th, which was really exciting for us. However, we didn't have a chance to talk to you.
But you're here now.
I'm here, and I missed that one. That's what I'm saying. Like I showed it. I brought gifts because I missed it. Sorry to our producer, who's a big Raiders fan. But shout out to the Raiders. Shout out to the Raiders. We love the Raiders too. I just happen to have a special attachment to the Niners, right?
If we can just start by introducing yourself and maybe share a fun fact about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Carlos Yustis, as Gana mentioned it. I'm the sports anchor for Telemundo Bay Area in Channel 48. I also work with NBC Bay Area. We're sister companies, so we work together.
Yeah.
I'm also a reporter and anchor correspondent for Telemundo National. So I've been lucky enough to do all their big events since 2018. I've done 2 men's World Cups, 3 women's World Cups. Counting the time I was a producer, now I've done 4 Olympics. So now I can say now I'm an Olympic veteran. Currently I am the silent reporter for the U.S. Women's National Team in soccer, and I also work for the San Francisco 49ers. I am the analyst and color commentator.
So you can get us tickets for free? Yeah,
that's the one thing I can do. Anything, anytime. That's just not a thing. I can get you good content from the 49ers when I'm there. We do have a privileged position to do that, and the team has been investing a lot in doing a lot of more Spanish content, which is great because they have a big following in Spanish, not only here in the Bay Area but in Mexico, which is usually where we're more focused on. We have now the radio broadcast for the San Francisco 49ers. It's nationally broadcasted in Mexico, so that's what we do.
And what's that station?
It's actually 38 different stations. We work with a group in Mexico called W Radio, which is the biggest radio company in Mexico. So we work with their stations, or the official broadcast from the 49ers got sold to them, and then they broadcast it. So it's really exciting. We get a lot of comments always from Niners fans in Mexico, and that's really cool.
Now, you follow so many sports. Is there a specific sport you're like, this is like my thing today? I know you're invested in all the sports, but again, is there like one favorite one that you're like, oh yes, this is the game?
Yeah, of course. I grew up playing soccer. I played soccer semi-professionally. I played for Cruz Azul up to 2nd division. I had a little stint with the U15 national team of Mexico before moving to the States.
Yeah.
I am a soccer coach. I'm a licensed soccer coach. I actually just finished during the pandemic. I finished a master's with the European University of Madrid with Real Madrid. It's the actual school for Real Madrid. I finished a master's on coaching and methodology. So soccer, it's been my life ever since I was 7 years.
And you mentioned you played for Cruz Azul.
Yes.
My dad's a huge Cruz Azul fan.
I saw that. We talked to her dad a little bit off camera. It was supposed to be a very enriching experience, and I feel like those 3 years that I was with the team on the semi-professional level, what it was like the academy, then the 4th team, and then the 3rd division, kind of shaped what my career was, because I feel like a lot of opportunities that I've got come from those 3 years.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm just curious, so you mentioned that you've been playing soccer since 7 years old, right? Was there like a particular moment in which you were like, this is what I want to do? Or
I think it was from the beginning, and it was strange because I feel I sound very conceited when I say these things, but I've been very fortunate and very lucky that things that I didn't think could become something, they become something without me really looking for them. And soccer was kind of one of them. My dad loved soccer, and me growing up, like, that's a fun fact.
And what's his favorite sports team?
We don't have one. My dad loves soccer. But the thing is that my parents are actors. So my dad had so many friends that were professional soccer players from so many different teams. We actually have a soccer jersey collection, and we have over 300 shirts between the two of us. And he has at least 50 from different teams in Mexico, from all the players that will give him jerseys just because they knew each other.
Whoa.
So it was hard for my dad to really become a real full-time fan of any team, because at the end of the day, he had a friend that played on a different team and he will give him a jersey or invite him to the game or invite him to know the team. So we were not like, I never got drilled that idea of like being a fan, and I feel that also helped in my career a little bit. The only team that I'm like, I grew up being a fan of, I lived in Miami for 13 years. We moved because of my dad's work, because he was working at Sábado Gigante with Don Francisco back then.
What?
And
No way.
and the first game I ever watched in the US was a University of Miami against FSU at the Orange Bowl with the Jimmy Johnson team that then became the head coach for the Cowboys. So that's where I got hooked. Like, I was it's like, it's all about the U through and through. Like, I'm a University of Miami fan, and that was the only team that I really like fully adopted. Then I became funny enough, I played for Cruz Azul, but I became a Pumas fan for a little bit. Pumas was my favorite team in Mexico. I had a lot of friends in the team, which also helped to why I was a Pumas fan. And the Mexican national team. I feel that is the only one I really suffered, especially because we've always suffered with the Mexican national team. So that's the only one that I really felt too hard, and like I really like held it. But anyway, but my dad, he played every sport that you can think of, even though he's an actor. He played football, American football, hockey. He raced cars, you name it. Any sport there was to be, my dad played it. Whether he played it well or not, that was not important. He was pretty good at soccer. He was actually very good at soccer, even when I remember him being little. But I hated soccer. I will get really bored. Another really funny anecdote. I was 3 years old, and my dad took me to watch a Pumas León game at the Estadio Olímpico Universitario. I was 3. And he was friends with the guy that was in charge of the field, like the field passes.
Really?
So he allowed us to get on the field while the game was going on. And we sat where the photographers sit. I fell asleep behind the
Oh, no.
goal. And Jorge Campos was the goalkeeper for Pumas. And I literally fell behind. And it's really funny because my dad should have a newspaper clip somewhere, but the game ended up 0-0. And the picture that they used for one of the biggest newspapers in Mexico was me sleeping behind the goal, saying like, "This is how good the game was." So that was my first contact with soccer, and it was like, no, like I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to play baseball, but Mexico back then didn't have a lot of opportunities to be able to do it. And then the 1994 World Cup came about, right, here in the United States. And in Mexico, they also launched a cartoon/anime, because back then I didn't know they were called animes. It was a Japanese cartoon. That was called Super Campeones, which the actual name is Captain Tsubasa. And it's about these kids that play soccer in Japan. And since they mixed it, I started watching it, and I was like, this is it. I'm playing soccer for the rest of my life.
I am sold.
And 7 years later, all of a sudden, I'm in the professional field, and I'm like, oh, man, I guess I'm pretty good at this.
Nice. Now, I have a question. I'm going to circle back from Gon. I had mentioned the field trip that we took on March 13th. I as well attended. One question I know a student had asked me was, a la Torre, I don't know. I'm just curious. Like, I wonder how the anchors must feel, you know, when they're on studio. And then we did ask that question to the anchors that were there, all right? But we want to get to know as well from you as a sports anchor, when you already are in that studio, like, are there any like apprehensions, fears that you feel before you go live?
Well, the advantage that we have as sports anchors on the local, and I guess I can talk to it in different levels. As a local sports anchor, I don't feel any nerves, and the only reason for that is that we're in charge of our full segment. So I build it, I write it, I edit it, I put the graphics on it, so I know exactly what's coming on that segment, every single thing. So it's hard for you to be like, oh my God, I'm gonna mess this up. I did feel that when I just started, because it was like the first times I was doing it. It was my first reps. My rhythm even was a little different, but. Just an example, the other day, I had to go do an event with the San Jose Barracuda. Because I also do PA. Like, I'm the official PA announcer for Levi Stadium for all soccer games for the next 3 years. I helped the San Jose Earthquakes with that a little bit. I actually did Bay FC last Saturday. So they invited me to do that for the Hispanic Heritage Night of the San Jose Barracuda, which they turned into Los Tigres del Mar. So I went to do that game, and I came back at 10:15, 10:30, and my newscast starts at 11.
Oh, wow.
I had everything ready before 11. But that's after, 17 years of doing it. I was able to pull that off before I was even freaking out. So that's the advantage there. However, for example, like the first time I did a World Cup, the first time I did Olympics, like I was sweating. Like you're sitting there, you're in the stadium, you realize it's the biggest, and then
you're live, yeah.
And not only that, my first World Cup, they put me to be sideline reporter for Argentina. So like my first assignment on a World Cup is to follow Messi. So I was freaking out. I was sitting there on the field in Russia, in Moscow, and like I could feel like I was like trembling, like, whether I win or why or not, no. And then they tell me like you have 50 seconds or like a minute to talk, and you feel like you're going 1,000 miles an hour, and you have all this information you want to put out. So you kind of struggle with that a little bit. Same thing with the Olympics when I did Tokyo, especially because Tokyo was a weird Olympics because it was during the pandemic. Because London and Rio. In London, I was a producer. In Rio, I was a digital reporter. So I was not on air. I was still doing interviews and whatnot, but it was not broadcasted live.
Right.
For Tokyo, I was live. So those ones, it's nerve-wracking. You're like, and then you had all these things with all the restrictions, and you had to take your mask on and then put it back on. And so it was a little more. But that 2018 World Cup, just remember sitting that at the Spartak Stadium, just waiting for the Argentina game. I was like,
but what did you do to reduce that fear?
You just breathe. I feel like the one advantage that I have also in that sense is one, I'm not. It was more about the information and the level of the game than the actual being on camera. I grew up being on camera. Like I grew up when like the first movie that I did as an extra with lines, I was 4. So my dad was in the movie. There was a part that they needed someone to talk, and they're like, "Oh, we need a kid. Oh, let's use Carlos," and then they put me in there. I did a play when I was 7 years old, like a full hour and a half kids play, and I was one of the main characters. So it wasn't that part. It's kind of like it's not nerve-wracking for me to be in this stage because I've always done it. I grew up in it. My parents, that's all they done all their lives. I grew up in a TV studio. I grew up on a film set. So that part was, but it's just like thinking that this is the most important sporting event in the whole universe. And I'm sitting here and I have to talk. Like that's a part. But also when you play sports, you have to deal with that because when you have a big game, or in my case that I was one of the youngest players on the team, I didn't get a lot of minutes. I was not constant starter. So I was constantly felt that I was put into the test, right? Like I'm a 14-year-old playing with these 19, 20-year-olds. So I was getting put to the test. So every time I was going to come into the field, you had to like take a deep breath. And sometimes you were playing in little stadiums. They were not huge, but you have 1,000, 2,000 people sometimes. So it's like playing in front of 3,000 people is still nerve-wracking for a 14-year-old. So to be able to see that, and then you kind of learn how to deal with that. So I feel like that athlete part of me would help me always to like stay calm to do these things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and just question for me: when you're playing in a stadium, even if it's like 1,000 or 2,000 people, are you thinking about it during the time when you're playing, or you're like in the process?
No, the first time you're there, and I also got to play a somewhat big game. There was once I got to play in Azteca Stadium for a preliminary game for a Cruz Azul America that was like 40,000 people. Wow. When you're there, before you start, if you're starting, I don't know how it feels starting because I didn't start any of those games. Some of the smaller stadiums, yes, but when you walk into the field, the first couple of times you do it, you're thinking about it. It's like, oh my God, it's all these people. And then sometimes when you're, especially in the small stadiums, like the fence and everything's really close, so you'll be warming up and people are screaming every single thing that you can imagine.
Oh my God.
Straight to your face. So to a 14-year-old say like, when you get out of here, we're gonna kill you. It's like not, it's very. You grow up real quick. You get to learn. You get to learn to have tough skin like real quick. So those times like you think about it, but then after that, like once you hit your first ball and you're running, it just becomes noise. Like it's just noise. Like
just like background noise.
Like it's just background. Like it is. Sometimes it's a little confusing, especially with this, if the fields are big and whatever, because you can't really see the other sideline. Like there's a lot of things that are distracting for the ball, but it's again like that's just part of the ecosystem of it. Like you don't really think about it. Like you just tune it out, and that's how those professional players do it. Like you're sitting, like you're an NFL player, you're playing a World Cup. Those 90,000 people, like they don't exist.
Wow. Moving forward, what is your vision? Like how you would like to retire on TV? I
mean, obviously, I understand like the media is a very changing product. I feel like I'm still really young, so I have that advantage. And you see, some of my mentors like Andres Cantor that's been doing this forever, and he's almost, he's getting to his 60s, and he's still the main voice for soccer in the United States. So there's a chance you can, as long as, job allows me, and there's opportunities for me to keep doing it. I would. I mean, obviously, I always like, and this is one of the reasons why I'm here, like, I always thought those coaching degrees and everything, I love teaching, whatever it is. So, and I mentioned it even on the session that we just had. I had such a fortunate and, like, privileged way of, like, getting to do what I do, that I feel like my way to give back is just, like, being able to pull those that want to have an opportunity, right? So whether it's giving them the tools to succeed or giving them an advice or in this case, like teaching them what I know, which might not be a lot sometimes, but it's what I know and I know it can help. I feel that that's how I want to do it. So ideally, if at some point we don't have, like, it's enough, there's no more chances to be on television, I would love going to teaching.
So thank you so much, Carlos, for coming here today, as well as thank you, my amazing co-host, Professor Alatorre, for being here. And thank you so much, guys, for watching this segment. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, as well as write a comment under this video. We'll see you soon.
Growing up, I thought basketball was my best path, one shot to success. At San Jose City College, that all changed. My mentors saw more in me than I saw in myself and showed me that I could be anything. No one in my family had ever graduated from college, but I knew I had an obligation for future generations. At San Jose City College, you can go anywhere you want to go and be anything you set out to be. Discover your brilliance at San Jose City College.
Welcome back, Jaguars, to our next episode of Take a Pause SJCC podcast. So today we actually have two special guests.
Yes.
First is a professor of ethnic studies, Andreas Rodriguez.
Hey. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Who also brought a special guest for us today. Dr. Mauricio Ramirez is a muralist whose work uncovers the powerful role of a Latinx artist in shaping traditional solidarity through a visual culture. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
And we know that you just finished the hosting the event, which is called Painting Solidarity, U.S. Central American Murals of San Francisco.
Anyway, so before we start with our first question, right, regarding the overall the event, and as well, we want to get to know more about you, Dr. Ramirez, and as well, Professor Rodriguez. I want to first begin by asking, would it be okay if you share a little bit about, like, your background and a fun little fact about you?
Yeah, so I'm Salvadoran American and born and raised in San Francisco. And I guess a fun little fact about myself is that I like producing hip-hop music. So I like producing beats.
Awesome.
And I do so through this hip-hop group called True People, which is TRU People. So that is something I don't really talk about mostly, but it's something more like a hobby and a passion that I do on the side.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Professor Rodriguez.
Oh, wow. I got to top that. So I've been at SJCC for, I want to say 8 years now. Been teaching overall for about to be 12 years. So it's pretty amazing to think how long time has passed by. And just a little fun fact, I'll thank my wife for this. I have become a traveler, and so I visited 19 different countries.
Wow!
And so for spring break, I'm going to visit Amsterdam. So that'll be country number 20.
Nice.
So happy about that.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well, diving into our first question, Dr. Ramirez, myself, of course, our viewers, and my fabulous co-host, Ghana, want to know, what inspired you to focus your research on U.S. Central American murals in San Francisco? And what do they reveal about solidarity and resistance?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So my initial inspiration came from just being Salvadoran American, being born in San Francisco, growing up in San Francisco as well, and realizing that there were many Central American murals in San Francisco, and particularly the Mission District. So I'm talking about a very specific place in San Francisco, which is the Mission District, right?
Right.
And so in doing that, I realized that there were many Central American murals in San Francisco, but many of them hadn't been talked about or written about. But growing up, I would see them. So I would see them pretty often.
Yeah.
And it sort of inspired me to think more about, how can we talk about these murals? How can we represent these murals, especially when they were done in the 1980s, right? So they were done in a very specific moment of, this country's and this world's history, right? When we think about Central American migration into the United States. So it was those histories that I really wanted to uncover. And in a sense, your question is, how is resistance, shown in these murals? And they were born out of a specific moment, again, in time. And when we think about art history, they come from something called Artist Call. So this is called Artist Call Against U.S. Intervention in Central America. And that was 1984, January of 1984, began in the East Coast in New York, but it spread throughout the nation. So eventually, two artists, Ray Patlan and Patricia Rodriguez, decided to create murals that were going to protest U.S. intervention in Central America. But it was inspired certainly by the Artist Call. So in doing so, they were showing, resistance against the U.S. intervening in these Central American countries. And that's sort of part of the research as well, is thinking about how 27 murals were created by roughly 37 artists and how these murals have impacted San Francisco and the history of solidarity murals that exist in the city.
Yeah, thank you. And I actually attended your event as well. That was, of course, hosted by Professor Rodriguez and as well with you, Dr. Ramirez, so thank you. Now, folks, also want to share something today because we are going to be, Michelle and Ghana and I, sharing the co-host with Professor Rodriguez. So, Professor Rodriguez, take us on to our next question.
Absolutely. So the next question is, in your view, how have Latinx artists helped reframe dominant narratives about migration and identity through their visual work?
Yeah, so here, I'm going to narrow that question a little bit through just murals, right? Because I think largely Latinx peoples have done it not just through murals, but through other, forms of art and visual expression. So I'll narrow it down to just murals specifically. But thinking about how murals come about from, another specific moment that happens in the 1960s in the south side of Chicago. It's called Wall of Respect, that existed in the south side of Chicago, largely African-American population. Those were some of the first community murals that we see in the U.S. And from there, that idea of sort of do-it-yourself artists, community artists, creating murals that portrayed, their own ideals, their own leaders. So there's like paintings of Malcolm X and other prominent civil rights figures during that time. And that idea spread to other places throughout the nations, right? Like barrios, a lot of Latinx barrios that exist here in California and the Southwest. So that movement expanded, and I think Latinos or Latinx peoples that have created murals has this long history, not just coming from the U.S., but also thinking about how the Mexican mural movement influenced that, right? When we think about the work of Diego Rivera, Siqueiros, Jose Clemente Orozco, right? That lineage in which, when the Chicano movement came about, really inspired, the Mexican mural movement inspired the Chicano art movement. And from then on, we could see that Latinos, Latinx peoples here in the United States continued that tradition of creating murals, but more based around community and talking about issues that were affecting the barrio, affecting their neighborhoods. And again, it's sort of decentering what may be the media or Hollywood representations of Latinx peoples. And so here is where we see the power coming back to the hands of those artists, right, that are of Latinx descent or minorities throughout the nation. And that starts the community movement. And it continues to this day. So it's something that continues. And I'm really happy to contribute just a small, portion of that through this history around U.S. Central American solidarity murals.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. No, this is really amazing. And moving forward to our next question is, if you can share with us maybe a specific mural or piece of art that deeply moved you or transformed how you understand history.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there was one specific mural growing up that I had seen, and it eventually got tagged over, and it's no longer there. It's like just like a moment in which it existed. But it's called Alto el Fuego by Juana Alicia. So Juana Alicia is a Chicana muralist, and she's been in the Bay Area for a long time. And she creates this mural called Alto el Fuego, which means stop the fire. I guess there's different ways in which we can translate this, but that's one way, right? Alto el Fuego, like stop the fires or stop the firing. And so Juana Alicia paints this in 1988 while the civil wars are happening in Central America. I see it up until like the 90s, right? And I think eventually in the 2000s it gets just graffitied over. So eventually there's so much graffiti that, it's past the point of fixing it. But I grew up seeing that, and it's an image which you just see a boy, a brown boy, and you see these two hands that are sort of protecting him, and behind or in front of those hands are a bunch of guns, like several like military, looking sort of guns, rifles, and they're protecting this this small boy, and that image alone, it's so universal in a sense that I think it just inspired me to learn more about these Central American murals. I eventually, talked to Juana Alicia and have these interviews, but that was one mural that I didn't even know was talking about Central America until I did the research, and then I realized, oh, it's talking about Central America. Yeah. So that was sort of a key moment in my research where I realized, I was like, oh, I think these murals have much deeper meanings than what we see and longer histories.
Right. And then I have a question, then we're going to transition over back to Professor Rodriguez. This mural, where was it located? As well in San Francisco?
Yeah, so it was in the Mission District off of, I don't know the exact streets, but Mission Street for sure, which is, one of the main streets. And I think if you took the 14 Mission, and that's probably one I saw, the Muni bus route, people see it. And I think a lot of people have a lot of a connection to that mural because it was so public on Mission Street, but I can't remember the cross street.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's such a great point you make about the public aspect of it too. You can see it when you're walking by, you see it when you're taking the bus. I mean, just those stories and that visual really does mean a lot. And so as a younger person, right, that really holds a lot of weight, a lot of importance in terms of the work that you do. And with that said, my next question is, how do you see art functioning as a tool for political and cultural empowerment, especially in immigrant and marginalized communities?
Yeah, I mean, going back to sort of what I said earlier, right, is thinking about just the birth of community mural movements and how mural movements are impactful, right? Like they're community murals, so they're bringing in people from different backgrounds. A lot of people are not necessarily artists or professional artists, and I think that's also one key aspect of community murals is thinking about how, these are sort of everyday people, right? People that don't have art training or a background in art as a professional. So, really grassroots-oriented murals, and those still exist to this day, but it's putting the power of the visual, of creativity in the hands of sort of the everyday person, right?
Yeah.
And specifically, right, in these barrios, neighborhoods, right, that, when we think about representations and visuality, like what represents us, I think having those icons or iconographies that many of these artists have put on their walls, decorating their own, neighborhoods, as I said before, is empowering, right? Instead of thinking about the narrative that, I don't know, the media or news or Hollywood might represent. No, we see, artists actually taking that control and creating these community murals, which in the end are collaborative too. So I think that's also a really important aspect, is that it's a collaboration. It's what it's created for and by the people.
Right. And then this event today was definitely, was, again, congratulations. It was a fabulous event. But as well, this event, right, definitely did stem from, like, your book, right? Your book, which is entitled Painting Solidarity, U.S. Central American Murals of San Francisco, right? So I know, we're going to be wrapping up very soon. If there's some things as well that you were not able to share at the event you would like to share with viewers, what would that be?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's something I've been working on for quite some time. I completed my dissertation in 2021. My PhD is in Latin American and Latino Studies from UC Santa Cruz, very proud banana slug. And what I'm sort of happy to say now at this moment is I signed an advance contract with the University of Washington Press under the series of critical ethnic studies and visual culture. So I had editors there that were really supportive around my work, and they committed to publishing this book, or at least, hopefully having it come into fruition, right, as it goes through peer review, which it hasn't gone through yet. But I'm really excited to continue working on this research and completing this book manuscript. It's something that I'm going to continue doing in the next couple of months, but eventually I do want to see this book out in the world. I shared this during the event, but when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, I didn't see any books that were talking about Central American murals or U.S. Central American murals, right? What I'm coining here is U.S. Central American solidarity murals. So thinking about how these murals created for and by Central Americans and the diaspora continue to live on in San Francisco's Mission District from the 1980s to the present.
Right.
So that's something that, having a book around that, I think will be valuable for those who are just interested in the history of San Francisco, of Central Americans in San Francisco, and who are interested in mural arts in general.
Right. Well, we want to thank you for being here today, Dr. Ramirez, as well as a professor and as well our co-host for today, Professor
thanks.
Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Great work. As well, my co-host Ghana, thank you as well. We want to thank all of you for tuning in today, and we will definitely catch you back after these announcements.